You must have heard the stories about people who bought something on eBay and then received something different. Well, a similar thing happened to tank enthusiast Nick Mead. However, Nick actually received the item he ordered and an additional one with a fortune. That one transaction was enough to earn Nick and his business notoriety. His discovery went viral, made international headlines, and could have even stirred conflict between two countries in the Middle East. So, what exactly did Nick Mead find in his tank? One day, Nick Mead was searching the internet and looked for a new combat vehicle he could add to his unusual collection. He came across a Russian T-54 tank that someone was selling on eBay. Impressed by this tank, Nick came up with an unusual business idea and simply had to buy it for his company called Tanks a Lot that provides its customers a tank driving experience. I saw it advertised, and I had this idea of doing a From Russia with Love experience, where people would come and drive 3 Russian tanks, Mead told the Daily Mail. He certainly was not expecting to find buried treasure inside of it, but that is exactly what happened. The model of tank Nick wanted to buy, the Soviet T-54, was introduced shortly after the World War II, and it was part of a series of main battle tanks. These tanks took part in many armed conflicts throughout history. It's estimated that over 100,000 Russian T-54 tanks were built in 1979 when the production of the series was stopped and the T-54 was replaced by a newer model. The Russian T-54 tank was used in various battles all over the world, including the Middle East, Angola, and during the Vietnam War. John Hughes, a 3-year-old man at the time, was the one who was selling the tank on eBay. He was hoping to sell the tank, but actually ended up trading with Mead. Hughes traded the tank in for 2 of Mead's armored vehicles that were worth about $42,000. However, Hughes didn't have a clue that there was a fortune hidden inside the Soviet tank he was selling, and as it turned out, that fortune would be worth 60 times more than the exchanged vehicles he got in return. But the tank's hidden fortune came with a dark secret as well. As a person who had been collecting combat vehicles for so many years, Mead was aware that some of them come with more than what is seen on the surface. Tanks are destructive machines used in war, but during times of conflict and uncertainty, they are also used for some other purposes. In the times when the political climate was uncertain and the entire state in danger of collapsing, tanks were typically used in combat, but also to safely transport people and some valuable items. Whether it is an important person or some stolen treasure in question, every tank comes with a unique story of its own. The origin of the T-54 tank Nick Mead bought on eBay is certainly an interesting one. Even though it is a Soviet tank, it was manufactured in China and used by the Iraqi army commanded by the notorious President Saddam Hussein. Tanks were used frequently during the Iran-Iraq War, which lasted for 8 years. Hundreds of thousands of lives were claimed during the war. Shortly after the war ended in a stalemate, tanks were then used for another purpose, the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait. During the invasion, Iraq looted the Persian Gulf, a nation known for holding numerous treasures, and many of those treasures were transported by tank. Shortly after receiving the tank, Mead and his Tanks a Lot team got to work. They worked together to examine the condition of the tank, replace the parts that were damaged, and also restore the parts that had eroded over time. All of this was done to get the tank back to its optimal condition and make it fully operational again. As a part of the restoration process, Nick and his team searched every corner of the armored vehicle, knowing that they have to be as thorough as possible. Overlooking just one part of the tank could make the vehicle critically malfunction, or even worse, put the lives of Mead's customers in danger. After putting in countless hours to inspect, restore, and repair the tank, the team came across something very unusual. One of the tank's fuel canisters was not working properly, and it seemed that it was disabled on purpose. Also, the team suspected there was something hidden inside. They could immediately tell after inspecting the weight of the canister that there was something stored inside, and that something certainly wasn't supposed to be found. After carefully removing the canister from the tank, Nick and his team found something that they had never expected to. The Tanks a Lot team carefully removed the fuel canister and started preparing themselves for the item they were about to extract. They knew that the best-case scenario was finding something worthy, and the worst-case scenario would be finding something that would put them all in danger. The team found a stockpile of ammunition inside the fuel tank. For the time being, they were in the clear. They knew that they would have to report the ammunition to the authorities and turn it in. They had no idea how old the bullets were and whether they could be used at all. In addition, using a faulty and defective bullet could be disastrous, so the team decided to be very cautious. Nick's team grew more cautious after their first discovery. They knew that if the tank was used to hide the ammunition, then there must be more secret items stashed inside. And sure enough, they did end up discovering the tank's other secret. Shortly after they discovered the ammunition, Nick's team found another fuel tank that was not working properly. One thing about this fuel tank was that it was much heavier than the previous one. It wasn't heavy because it contained fuel or ammo, but something completely different. The team was certain that this canister must hold some firearms that go along with the ammunition they found, but after taking the canister off the tank, they started suspecting that perhaps even something else could be stored inside. The team decided that this time they would record a video of the unveiling of whatever was inside the canister. The reason why they wanted to do this was in case the item inside the canister were illegal. They believed they should have proof that the items were not theirs and that they were found inside the tank. The fuel canister was so heavy that the two men had to use crowbars to lift it up high enough and be able to reach inside. They had to break the underside of the canister in order to get the mysterious items. One of Meade's colleagues put his hand inside, not knowing what could be inside. After a few moments of struggling with the weight of the item hidden inside the canister, the man pulled out an unusual-looking brick-shaped item. One brush against his clothes, and a shiny gold bullion was revealed. The Tanks-A-Lot team had found gold. Enthusiasm immediately filled the room, and the two colleagues that were previously struggling to hold the canister in the air suddenly had no problems holding it once they felt the adrenaline rush. Mechanic Todd Chamberlain put his hand back inside to see if there were more gold bars. It was just like magic. Every time Todd put his hand in the canister, he would pull out another gold bullion. One of the workers commented that the experience was better than seeing a dog have puppies. One after another, the gold bullions kept coming. Eventually, the team collected 5 gold bullions. But the story doesn't end here. The entire Tanks-A-Lot team was excited by their amazing find. Never in their wildest dreams had they thought they would find real gold bars, more precisely a fortune, hidden inside a tank that was bought off eBay. But they were not sure whether they could keep their newfound treasure. The team started discussing immediately whether or not they could keep the gold. Nick Meade, the owner of Tanks-A-Lot, stepped in with a firm foot. He said they had to do everything according to the rules, which meant reporting absolutely everything they found to the authorities, including the golden bullions. Meade contacted the police to inform them about the tank and everything they found inside of it, including the golden bars. Soon, the police officers came to the farm and collected everything, leaving Nick only with a receipt. The receipt became his only connection to the gold bars that on their way to a UK police station. According to the police, they were going to attempt to locate the rightful owners of the gold. But where did the bars come from? Nowadays, you can buy almost anything online, and we mean literally anything. The endless space that is known as the internet can sometimes be a weird and scary place. But we aren't talking about scary things such as human trafficking. We are talking about eBay, the multi-billion-dollar e-commerce company. eBay is definitely an unusual place, full of odd people selling odd items. People have sold items as weird as imaginary friends, unassembled snowmen, and even gum chewed by Britney Spears on eBay. But buying a tank online? It seems as if eBay has a market for everything. Nick Meade certainly has an unusual hobby, tanks. But as you could conclude from the story so far, he was not buying figurines. Nick was after the real things. While to most people it would seem very strange and perhaps illegal to try and buy a tank on eBay, it wasn't Meade's first time. By the time he was thinking about buying this particular tank, the one that would change his life, he already had an entire collection of tanks in his arsenal. But what did he use them for? Did he plan to overthrow the government? Was he just a military enthusiast? Or is there something else? So what on earth could be the reason why Nick Meade has a tank collection? It is his job. Meade runs an unordinary business that includes tanks and other armored vehicles. If you tend to watch a lot of war movies, the chances are you've seen some of his tanks. Meade's company rents out tanks and other armored vehicles so they can be used in movies and TV shows. Just think about it. Have you ever asked yourself where the tanks in films and movies come from? Well, they come from companies like Meade's. But even he couldn't predict what was about to happen to him. Nick Meade's company is called Tanks-A-Lot, and that is precisely what he offers. A lot of tanks. At his farm in the village of Helmden, England, you can sign up for an incredible experience, driving a tank around the property and even crushing some cars with it. Meade's business also offers some other services and activities. For example, you can do a tank driving course and get an official license. Once you pass your license test, you're eligible to buy a tank from Tanks a Lot. There's a wide variety of tank models in their collection for sale, just in case you suddenly become interested in purchasing one. Right now, you must be thinking that it's practically impossible to buy a tank, much less have an entire collection or better said an army of tanks. Well, as you can see, it isn't that difficult at all. In the United States and the United Kingdom, there is a great number of companies that offer similar services to Mead's. However, there is one rule: all of those businesses must abide. The main gun of the tank must be decommissioned, but the actual process of buying the tank isn't problematic at all. To this day, Nick Mead has over 150 tanks in his collection. We can truly say that Nick has his personal army. In fact, there are even some countries that don't own that many tanks. The tanks that Mead owns comes from all over the world, and each one has its unique story and background. After being in the business for so long, Mead is well aware of the fact that tanks are used for purposes other than just war. Sometimes, they can be used for hiding and smuggling various items. It is quite easy to find secret spots in gigantic vehicles and hide those items. Mead is also a proud owner of one rather controversial tank. The tank is known as Challenger 1. The Challenger 1 is a British-made main battle tank, and Mead is the only citizen in the world who owns one privately. But that's not the controversial thing we wanted you to know. What is truly controversial is that the Challenger 1 tank is still currently in use by the British military. This has led many people to wonder how exactly Nick got his hands on one. How Nick Mead managed to purchase this rare tank that is still used by the British Army may be confusing, but it is certainly not a secret. He is well known in his community for his business and his incredible enthusiasm for all things related to tanks and armored vehicles. After all, it would be quite hard to hide a tank, or to be more precise, 150 of them, in a village. Mead can even be seen driving his massive tanks around frequently. So many customers flock to his company to experience the excitement and adrenaline rush of driving a tank. Even before Mead's amazing discovery of the gold bars hidden in the T-54 tank, he made a few headlines for things such as driving his children to school. You would think that driving your children to school is an ordinary task, but for those such as Nick Mead, it can be so exciting that they end up in the news. Mead made the news for driving his 2 kids to school in a tank that weighs 17 tons. Now that's how you impress your friends in the entire school. Mead says that his kids love driving around in one of the tanks, but that they are so used to the experience that it's not as exciting for them anymore. If the ease of purchasing a tank doesn't take you by surprise, then you will definitely be surprised to learn that it is completely legal to drive a tank on the streets, just like any other car. Mead says that he gets a lot of attention when he's driving around town in his armored vehicles. People often do a double take. They can't believe it. And when they see the tax disc, which verifies it's road legal, they're even more gobsmacked. Nick Mead takes advantage of the law that makes driving tanks legal, and he often drives one through the town. He says that people wave as if their hands are going to drop off when they see him. Mead even likes teasing the local police. The police often grin or look the other way, and most of them don't know what to do. It's not every day you see a tank rolling into town. Nick Mead told the Telegraph, he certainly seems to enjoy watching other people's reactions. Even though a tank is legal on the streets, that doesn't mean that driving a giant war machine down a busy city street is a simple task. One wrong move and, you can easily crush a car or a person with your 17-ton vehicle. Mead admits that he has had some close calls while driving one of his tanks in town. The worst that has ever happened to him was taking the fuel cap off a bus that got too close. But in my 20 years driving tanks, I've never had one crash. I'm always extremely careful, especially with the kids. It is believed that the gold bars Mead and his team found were stolen from Kuwait by Iraqi soldiers during the invasion of the nation back in 1990. Iraq looted billions of dollars worth of valuable items from Kuwait during their invasion, and only some of those items were returned. After the war ended, Iraq returned 3,216 gold bars to Kuwait, and each of the bars was weighed. The return was overlooked by the United Nations. Another possibility could be that the gold was stolen from Saddam Hussein's personal stash. After the U.S. invasion of Iraq, the troops found almost $1 billion worth of hidden items, including gold bars as well. While the thought of keeping the gold might have come across the minds of Nick Mead's team at some point, they knew that it would be a terrible idea in the end. The gold that Meade found in the T-54 tank is worth about $2.4 million. Meade's entire company soon found out about the gold bars, as word spread around quickly. Had Nick kept the gold for himself, robbers would surely have done everything necessary to steal it, thereby endangering Meade, his family, and other employees as well. The story of Meade's incredible discovery quickly went viral and hit headlines worldwide. Everyone was amazed by what they had discovered, but also by something else. The fact that you can buy a tank on eBay without any restrictions. Who would have thought that you could do that legally? If you ever decide to start your own personal army, now you know that it's not as difficult as you might have expected. Reporters also searched for the man who sold Meade the tank. Turns out, he isn't bitter about not finding the gold himself. However, he did mention that if Meade gets to keep the gold, he expects at least a call to grab some beer. British police are currently trying to track down the rightful owners of the gold bars and return them. But one important question still remains unanswered. In the event that they are not able to find the rightful owners, who will get the gold? Meade stated that he still has the receipt he got from the police. The receipt is hidden in a bank vault, just to be safe. The worst case is, Nick said, he might get a finder's fee. However, he still has his fingers crossed that maybe, just maybe, he will get to keep all of the 5 gold bars he discovered inside the tank. The story about Nick Meade, his cruise, and the incredible find fascinated many people on social media. So many commenters were impressed by his lucky discovery. However, some were disappointed that he actually reported everything to the police. Among all those commenters, one proposed a more complex plan. The commenter, a man named Jeremy Wetzel, suggested staying quiet and selling the gold to questionable people at a discounted price, of course, for some quick cash. Others suggested melting the gold into jewelry. We just hope none of these guys are speaking from their own experience. Did Nick Meade do the right thing when he decided to turn the gold and ammunition in? Well, it depends on who you're asking. One of the commenters, a man named Nicholas Van Pelt, was more for the finders keepers approach. A similar thing happened in San Jose, California. One man, identified only as John, bought a storage unit which contained rare gold coins hidden inside. The lucky man decided to put the coins up for auction. In the end, he turned his $1,100 investment into a profit of $500,000. We wondered what would have happened if he called the police and turned in the coins. Though most commenters expressed disapproval of Meade's decision to get the police involved in his discovery, one person actually thought it was a smart idea. Even though he did turn the gold in, it's not that unlikely that he will get it back eventually. Actually, as commenter Nick Rappaport suggests, it will probably be impossible to trace back the gold's original owner, considering that they decided to hide it in a tank, and probably for a reason. If the original owner isn't found, Nick Meade is probably next in line. The only problematic thing is how long the search might take.